Hi, Joel.
Hey, Bob.
How you doing?
Me?
You, Joel. How's Joel doing?
This thing has been a nightmare. Are you kidding? I mean, the list you sent, the instructions. Have your viewers, what do you call them, viewers? Have they seen this thing? All the rules for doing this?
Yeah, we post them.
Before we start, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Don't you have a book to write?
You know, it's funny you should mention that. Yesterday I gave my editor another 5 chapters.
Oh, yeah, right.
I did. I went to New York. I gave him another 5 chapters. This is such a perfect segue because while I was in New York, I saw the Al Gore movie, An Inconvenient Truth, which is about global warming.
You're trying to go on topic, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm trying to go on topic. But I have a question for you. You must be pretty nervous.
About what?
Well, this is like potentially your big break. I mean, I don't want to belittle your past accomplishments.
Let me explain something to you. Okay,
yeah.
I am what you used to be, which is I am a writer. Okay?
Oh, I remember that.
I have not been seduced by the internet the way you have. I have not been, and I realize that you like the glamour and the glory, and you're creating this cult, I guess it is, and that's
global media juggernaut as well, Joel.
Well, I mean. Let's face it, it's hard to write. And the kind of book you're writing, what are you doing like God, a memoir or something?
I think that's been done.
It's a book
that
sounds
God,
like a hard book. I can understand. I'm sympathetic. That is a hard book to write.
Yeah.
If I had that book contract, I would also fritter away my time.
Yeah.
With these little cameras and little microphones and things. So
we're on the same wavelength.
It's understandable. But if you want to drift on topic, that's fine. It's just that, I find the whole thing. It's sad because I liked it when you were a writer. I liked your books back when you wrote.
I wrote. I'm a shadow of my former self, Joel.
And there wasn't much there to begin with.
Yeah.
Are we going to go on topic now? Let me just say, this is all interesting. I want people to know that I'm not in my own office because I actually don't have an office. I'm in Tom Shales' office.
Hey, Joel. Let me just say something here. Let's not spend too much time lowering people's expectations because there's a chance that you won't be a total flop. Okay? I mean, there's a chance. I'm not betting on it, but there's a chance you'll be good.
I've been good so far. You're the one who is all over the place. Get a grip, and let's proceed.
Okay, let's get moving.
Okay.
For our podcast listeners, I should say, this is Joel Achenbach. He's written books. He writes for the Washington Post. He has a blog at the Washington Post called Achenblog. Really clever title, I think, because, see, it's like his name is Achenbach, and then they take Bach out and put blog in, and I would just say whatever you're paying those branding consultants at the Washington Post, it's not enough, Joel, because that's really good. But listen, I have the truth.
Have you ever read my blog?
I read your blog. You
read it today, but only because it was about you. It was about us. Yeah, I wrote about you, and I wrote about Mickey and Blogging Heads, and that's why you read it.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a believer that if you have too many readers, it messes up the art.
It's funny that explains your blogging strategy because this is. I notice you have not adopted the optimal traffic maximizing blogger strategy of actually linking to other blogs, which will then reciprocally link to you.
Well, let me explain that for a second.
I mean, I know you have this nice small cult following, and I'm sure some of them are like attractive women and everything wonderful. But if you want the big numbers,
very attractive women.
But if you want the big numbers, you really need to link to blogs that will then link back.
Okay. But why would I link to someone else's blog when their blog usually sucks, first of all? Sorry, I probably shouldn't say that.
But the same reason you're nice to people at cocktail parties.
Not only that, but there's all these little tricks about page views. So you link to some other site, and someone clicks over there, and they click back to your site. That counts for a second page view. But whatever happened to reading? I'm interested in having people actually read my words. I don't want to link to your Blogging Heads thing. I want people to read my stuff.
Joel,
and just my stuff.
Joel,
this whole idea of connecting to other people is.
Joel, I'm having second thoughts about this whole enterprise.
Your enterprise?
No, today, the dialogue, you and me. It's not too late to pull the plug,
Well, then I'm out of here, man.
I could just say the word to one of the technicians on location there where you are. By the way, how was the green room? Were things okay?
It was nice.
Okay,
it was excellent. The amenities are fantastic. Those little pastries you have are incredible.
Sometimes Isaac forgets to chill the sparkling water, and some guests are accustomed to better treatment, and that's why I asked. Okay, so are we ready? 5
Yes.
minutes into the thing, are we ready to talk about the actual subject?
Possibly, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead. You go first.
Okay, it's like global
But if you're going
warming.
to ask me, if you're going to ask me questions,
Yeah.
I'll just tell you up front, I don't know. Okay, I don't know the answer to whatever it is you're going to ask me.
Could you think of...
I have a question for you, though. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
And this is actually a serious question, based on because I was reading through some of
my work, my Uber?
some of your Nonzero stuff, and I guess I'm wondering if you're a utopian.
Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary. I'm a cynic. But I'm a cynic who brings a message of hope, Joel.
You believe, isn't this true? You believe that for several billion years there has been this grand, rather progressive enterprise of intelligence emerging on this planet. Isn't that correct? And this is going someplace good, and there's kind of a spark of the divine in the whole thing. Am I paraphrasing you correctly? And I guess the question I have is, and this is, if I may drift on topic, something
Feel
that
free,
kind of
Joel.
comes, kind
Feel
of comes,
free.
Listen, that comes
It
up.
is your show, after all.
This comes up in the Al Gore movie. Are we the good guys? I mean, forget, are we the good guys versus, the Russians or something? But are we the good guys on the planet biologically as a species? Is the human race a good thing? And I think that I actually am somewhat of a utopian that way, but I can see the argument that this is this big experiment of the efflorescence of one species. All these human beings, 6 billion. I mean, when I was born, there were like 4 billion people. When you were born, there was like 2 billion. And so this is this huge phenomenon, big phenomenon, okay, big phenomenon of all these people out there, and all the energy that they're using, and all the carbon they're pumping in the atmosphere. And I think that what Al Gore is saying is, whoa, this is dangerous, this is potentially catastrophic. Let's look at ourselves honestly and understand who we are, and maybe put a halt to this. And I think that is a compelling argument. I think it can easily drift into a kind of...
Well, you know a thing or two about drift, buddy, so I'm going to take your word about this. Now go ahead.
No, I'm done.
No.
I'm done, no. So,
No.
but I'm asking you, I mean, do you believe in 1,000 years that we're going to be dealing with this sort of post-apocalyptic world? I don't know if it's a nuclear wasteland or if it's that we've just crashed the whole biosphere. Do you think that all the chickens are going to come home to roost with all their avian flu, etc.? Or are you more of a utopian that thinks that human beings are so adaptable and intelligence is such a robust kind of biological entity that somehow we will muddle through and solve all of our problems, and in 1,000 years we'll all be in lotus land?
So in your dichotomy, either you think we're totally fried, or you're a utopian. Those are the only two choices.
I thought my question was fairly simple, and it was stated directly. I mean, what's your vision?
My vision is that today you and I have a conversation about global warming. How do you like that vision, Joel?
Okay, all right. Let's talk about global warming. What's your opinion about carbon dioxide?
Carbon dioxide. Let me get back.
How about methane?
Methane depends on whose methane it is.
How about sulfates?
Joel. I'm letting my mistakes are letting you control the conversation.
Ozone.
As in ozone.
Ozone is a great word. It's fun just to say it. Ozone.
Yeah, that was. I really enjoyed
the ozone. Okay, do you want to talk about global warming? What do you want to talk about?
Here's what I want to talk about.
Okay.
Now, my asking this question will involve my finishing a sentence, maybe 2, 3, 4 in a row. Okay.
Okay.
Can we get advanced
clearance on that?
Have I been
a bad guest?
No.
I did not have coffee or anything. I mean, not for a couple hours.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Can I just say I feel really weird with that camera looking at me? I know people probably wonder why are my eyes glancing around like this, but I don't know how long I can stare at this thing.
Joel, at this point, I doubt there's anyone out there wondering anything at all, actually.
Yep.
But just in case there is, why don't we continue the conversation?
Okay.
Okay, you've been immersing yourself among these global warming skeptics. Because you have this piece coming out in the Washington Post, Sunday Magazine, this Sunday.
That's correct.
You were kind enough to send me a couple of early fragments of it. Apparently it was beyond your technological capacity. You sent me a whole draft.
I would not do that. It's not published yet.
Oh, right. And then
I gave you a little something just to know
what...
I just gave you something to know what the topic is. The topic is global warming deniers or skeptics.
Okay.
I use the word skeptics because there's really not very many who are just absolute deniers anymore. I mean, the deniers sort of have kind of...
Okay, but even in the fragments, I saw a little contradiction there. Okay? On the one hand, after this drum roll about these so-called skeptics and or deniers, and you've sucked us into the piece with that, then you get to this place where you say, well, actually, they're not denying that it's happening. It's more they're saying it's not that bad or it's not that dramatic or it'll be actually good. But the fact is... This guy, what's his name, Gray, Paul Gray or something?
Bill Gray.
Bill Gray, the world's leading hurricane authority, who is a global warming skeptic. You've already quoted him saying that in 20 or 40 years or something, or some point after he's dead, he'll be vindicated because the Earth will have started cooling again. So he seems to be a bona fide skeptic.
Yes. You have to understand that it's not like all skeptics are the same. In fact, a lot of the skeptics will say, I'm not really a skeptic. I'm not one of them. Or that other guy, he's crazy. That other guy's full of beans. I had people say that to me.
Beans.
And the way it works is there are people who say the evidence for the world getting warmer is either weak or there are these sort of anomalous readings. For example, for a long time, satellites did not show the level of warming in the data in the upper atmosphere that was expected based on the temperature readings at the surface. I mean, the surface was getting, clearly getting warmer, but, why was the atmosphere above that not getting warmer? It didn't make any sense. And just recently they've said, okay, we've re-examined the data. There were some errors in the way the data were handled. And, in fact, there really is no major contradiction between the satellite data and the surface data. I know this is fascinating. But there are still some people out there who are kind of skeptical on just the issue of the warming itself. Then you have a whole other level of skepticism, which is how much of it is due to human beings. Now, how much of it is anthropogenic? And some people say, well, okay, the world's getting warmer, but it's not because of us. Or if it is because of us, it's a trivial amount because of us. Now, can I keep talking for a second? Now, there are a few more people who then say, okay, yes, the world is getting warmer, and we are part of it, but they say, no big deal, because it's actually a good thing. Carbon dioxide is like fertilizer.
Right.
It's a good thing. We should be happy. You can be growing wheat in northern Canada.
Okay, so it's not.
And finally, there are people, because I'm not done yet. Okay, who say, all that may be true, that the world's getting warmer, and human beings are part of it, and the problem may actually be, relatively severe, but there's nothing that we can do about it, and so we ought to just live our lives.
Okay. Now, the people in the first two categories, that is to say people who either say the warming's not happening in a really consistent long-term way or we're not causing it. There's one graph that I saw in this Al Gore movie that it seems to me they're going to have to explain away somehow, and you probably know how they do it. It's apparently covers the last 650,000 years, as I recall, and they get this data from ice crystals or something. I mean, how it is that they know what the temperature was 600,000 years ago and what the CO2 level was. But there's a graph of changing CO2 levels and a graph of temperatures, and they are, quite parallel. When one goes up, the other goes up. When one goes down, the other goes down. Now there must be some sort of causal relationship involving those two variables, whether or not it's if you accept the data as valid to begin with.
Let me stop you. First of all, people accept the fact that if you increase the CO2, you will increase temperatures. There's a lot of debate, though, about whether or not the degree to which a doubling of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will warm the planet. I mean, this is if you look at the mainstream consensus on this, there is still a fairly broad range of possibilities based on, among other things, we don't know what our emissions are really going to be over the next 50 years. I mean, there's different scenarios depending on technology. Secondly, we don't know exactly how sensitive the climate is to a doubling of CO2. And that's why when you read a report, as I'm sure you have, preparing for this, if you read a report such as the IPCC report, they give a range of possible increases in temperature, ranging from, several degrees Fahrenheit to, 10 degrees Fahrenheit over the next 100 years.
Which is a scary amount of variation, if you ask me. In other words...
Actually, the lower amount, I should say, is a little less than that, I think. More like 2 degrees Fahrenheit.
It's 2.5 to 10.4, if you must know, according to the fragment of your piece that you sent.
But
the range for about a century from now or so, the expectation is it'll be somewhere between 2.5 degrees warmer Fahrenheit and 10.4 degrees warmer, which is a whole lot warmer.
That's a different planet, if it's 10 degrees.
And the scary thing is...
Most people don't think it's going to be that high or that low. They think it's going to be someplace in the middle, and that's the consensus. And I do think that, it's just as a reporter, I accept the consensus on this. I see no reason to think that the consensus is wrong.
Okay, but Joel, first of all, in 1990, this same panel's range of expectations was 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit to 6.3 degrees. So now they've dropped that and said, no, it's actually 2.5 to 10.4. I mean...
First of all, you're sounding like a crank, okay? I mean...
Thank you.
Okay, there really has been no fundamental change for many, many, many years in the scenario. I mean, go back almost 20 years, and people have been saying, if you keep increasing CO2 and other greenhouse gases, methane and so on, you're going to see an increase in the world's temperature, and that's just the surface temperature. That's just the global average surface temperature, which is just one metric. And many people argue that's not the best metric. You could look at other things like regional temperature changes. I mean, in the Arctic, you already have dramatic changes taking place right now. I mean, forget this 1 degree Fahrenheit thing. I mean, you're talking about the whole place is melting, and as it melts, there's all these other feedback issues going on. There's methane and stuff, carbon coming right out of the ground.
Well, there's also the fact, as I learned in the Al Gore movie, that as the ice caps melt, I mean, the ice caps are themselves anti-global warming devices because being white, they bounce the sun's rays back out of the atmosphere, and the oceans near them are global warming abettors because they soak up the sun's rays. So as the ice caps melt, the ratio of global warming abettors to global warming fighters actually increases. And that's one reason this whole thing is so kind of unpredictable and could begin rising in some catastrophic way. I mean, the fact that... the fact that by your own story's account, in the course of 10 years, the estimate of this one body of scientists went from 1.8 to 6.3 degrees to 2.5 to 10.4 degrees. Suggests to me we just really don't know.
Let's stop you for one second, okay? You're talking about some raw copy. Those numbers have been... There's not been big change in the numbers. If fundamentally...
Was that the pre-fact check, Joel, that I was reading?
Those were some notes of mine that I was kind enough to share with you.
Well, I promise not to use them.
Let me say this, okay?
I will not use them to embarrass you. Don't worry.
So here's the real question. The question is, have we wasted 20-something years in trying to come up with a solution to this because the deniers, the skeptics, have been able to sow so much doubt about this? I mean, this is what Al Gore would say, and a lot of people have made this case that the fossil fuel industries have funded a lot of these organizations that are skeptical or deny global warming. And what they're doing is they're muddying the waters and they're paralyzing the United States and keeping us from taking intelligent action. Now, Greg Easterbrook, you're probably pals with Greg.
I know Greg.
Yeah, the other day he had this piece in the New York Times saying that, in fact, the reason that people were running around saying it's all uncertain, we don't know yet, was because, in fact, it was uncertain and we didn't know yet, and that it was essentially the right thing to do to be patient 15 years ago or 10 years ago. And then he announced in this piece that he has converted, he's no longer a skeptic, he's now a global warming, I guess you'd say, believer.
And I know other former skeptics who are coming around.
Yeah, they're all coming around. But let me just say about my story, I try to get into the minds of the people who are skeptical. Why are they skeptical? Where are they coming from? And it ranges from, for example, Bill Gray, who's a meteorologist. He's an atmospheric scientist at Colorado State, who has very strong belief about the way hurricanes develop and the way the ocean system works. He believes that the current rise in temperature is driven by an oceanic circulation, and that it'll essentially what goes around comes around, and in fact it's going to get cooler in 5-8 years. It ranges from someone like Bill Gray, who can be a very charming gentleman. He's also very I guess cantankerous would be fair. And then other people who are more on the economic end of things, or the ideological end of things, who are libertarians, such as people at the Competitive Enterprise Institute, Fred Smith, Myron Ebell, and others who will say that the last thing you want to do is have the federal government, suddenly say, okay, you can't burn gasoline anymore. You can't use energy anymore, because if you take that sort of top-down approach, in their view, you'll crash the economy. And their argument, and this is sort of an economic argument, is that over time, a thriving society such as the United States, if we keep just burning stuff and driving around doing whatever we want to do, that we will have the wealth and the education and the ingenuity to solve the problem by inventing, I guess, some magic fuel cell.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their argument. And so in my article, I get into sort of the minds of the global warming skeptics.
Okay, and here's a question. And this is not meant to be an invidious comparison, but you have a certain attraction to subcultures of people who are counter-conventional wisdom.
You wanted to say something worse than that, didn't you?
No, I don't think so.
Like nut jobs or something.
No. No, you wrote a book called Captured by Aliens, which was about, among other things, people who are convinced that alien life exists.
Did you blurb that?
Could have. But although...
Yeah, who knows? That's right. Probably.
I don't know. What would I have said?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I actually don't think I did blurb it. But I'd be willing to. Is it too late? Do you blurb it? You want to blurb?
It's a little too late.
No, please. Can I blurb
it's the
it?
definition of too late.
Not since the Holy Bible.
It's right. Not since the book of Genesis.
I'll email you the rest.
Can I just say about in case the people watching this are curious, the book Captured by Aliens is sort of an ironic title. I was not captured by aliens, so far as I know.
I think
in fact, there are no aliens in the book. Unfortunately,
our viewers are more sophisticated. Our viewers are more sophisticated than you may dream. Okay, I suspect few of them thought that you were writing a book about how you'd been captured by aliens. But But I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there any similarity you see? And again, this is not meant to be an invidious comparison. Because, first of all, aliens is not a crazy hypothesis. It could be.
No, it could be.
And also, my official view on global warming is technically agnostic. I mean, I bet that the consensus is right, but I haven't really looked at the research.
You and I have talked about this. I think you are a skeptic.
No, I'm not a skeptic.
You're squishy on this.
I'm not sure what that means. My view is, I would bet, and even give generous odds in this bet, that the consensus is basically right. The warming is due to human effects that are discernible, and we could ameliorate things by cutting down on so-and-so.
Okay, how are we going to do that? Okay.
I'm cynical enough about the way belief is formed, even among experts, and I'm familiar enough with cases where the conventional wisdom has been wrong, that I would not describe myself as anything other than technically an agnostic until I'd really spent a few months looking at the numbers and doing maybe what you've done, which is actually look at the numbers. And so you can declare...
I developed my own climate model, though I'm still struggling with the albedo.
Yeah, that's funny.
Let me say this about what you're raising. The question is, are the climate change skeptics comparable to the anti-scientific sort of, paranormal, supernatural,
not the
new agey?
The aliens wouldn't be a paranormal phenomenon. Their existence. I mean, there could be aliens, and it wouldn't alter our scientific worldview. They could be on another planet.
That's right. And I think the answer actually is no. That's not a good comparison, because the people who are skeptics, the ones I talked to, most of them are scientists, or they're somehow associated with science, or in the case of the libertarians, they're not crazy, whatever. But what the way it splits typically is that the skeptics say, look at all these anomalies and uncertainties and things that don't quite add up, and places where the sea level is dropping, and places where the ice is getting thicker, and they point to all these things that don't fit our notion of what global warming ought to look like.
Right.
And the counter-argument to that is, well, you just have to average it out. And when you average it out, yeah, it's getting warmer. And that, in fact, the mainstream argument is not that every place on the planet is going to get warmer in a smooth and inexorable fashion.
And in fact, the United States itself has not been getting warmer. It's been more or less level, right?
It actually has gotten warmer.
Wow.
It has gotten warmer. It has not gotten quite as much warmer as is that. I'm not even sure that's an English phrase. Its rate of temperature increase is a little bit less than the global average.
Okay. But there are these thickening ice sheets in Antarctica.
In some places, yeah, and this doesn't contradict any of the theories. I mean, the climate. Everyone admits two things. One, the climate is enormously complicated. I mean, there's always these feedback loops, and how do clouds affect this? How does water vapor affect this? I mean, these are issues that no one really knows for sure. And there are skeptics such as Richard Lindzen at MIT, who's long argued that water vapor and clouds are a negative feedback on the temperature increase. And he's skeptical at other things too. I think he was a big doubter that secondhand smoke had any negative health consequence. But I think the larger issue, and one that maybe that you would appreciate, is that in science we don't have absolute truths. Okay, we kind of gradually creep towards a better understanding of the world, and that it works very well. I mean, science in this process of over time trying to test hypotheses. It can go down the wrong road, and there are times when the maverick theory turns out to be the true one. I mean, continental drift. Wegener in 1912 says, these whole continents are moving, and everyone said that was crazy. It's impossible. Continent's too big. It's too heavy. That can't be true. And in World War II, they start seeing evidence. When they're studying the bottom of the oceans, that the magnetic record shows that it's true. The kind of fringe idea sometimes turns out to be true, but by and large, when you have an emerging consensus with lots of different scientists all over the world saying that they're picking up, these signals, this idea emerges and it becomes more robust. And what you see in the case of global warming is that an idea that in 1988 was hardly nailed down.
Which is when James Hansen got all the publicity for declaring...
Yes. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I was at the New Republic. I wrote an editorial confidently asserting that he was right.
So you jumped on the bandwagon right then?
You might say that, yeah.
Well, good call. Good job.
Thank you.
And so Hansen said that in 88, a lot of people in his own field said, yes, it may be true that you can pick up the signal of anthropogenic warming amid the general warming, because it's not irrelevant whether or not we're causing it. If we're not causing it, then there's really not.
Why do
anything? A lot of people told me, and when I did the story, they said, they thought Hansen was ahead of the data. They thought he was, maybe playing politics. I mean, he got a lot of criticism in his own field for making that statement, but he was right.
Mm-hmm.
He was right.
So there you go.
Now, let me say one thing about the skeptics. The question, and maybe you know this better than I do, the question is, what do we do about it? And my article actually doesn't answer that because it's too hard of a question, and also because I was focusing on the, this somewhat more limited view of the topic, which is, who are these people who say it's not happening, and why do they say that? But I think it is an interesting question. You know, what are we going to do about it? And since I started working on a story, I've certainly been thinking a lot more about my own energy use. And should I? I mean, I like to go on road trips. I like to get in the car and just hit the highway. That's part of who I am.
Oh, it's
and
most of who you are.
I may have to start taking the bus.
And it's just not the same.
Well, we'll see.
Just not the same.
We'll see. I may have to go Greyhound.
Not the same.
So,
different crowd of people you're hanging out with.
So is our conversation over now? Or did we
no,
kill
it's not
it?
over.
Did we kill it?
No, it's not over. Having wastefully expended the first 8 minutes with mindless banter.
Did you see my Carbucks mug?
What?
Carbucks.
Carbucks?
Carbucks, yeah.
What are Carbucks?
Well, you ever been to Carbucks?
No. I've been to Starbucks.
You make yourself a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
You get in the car, and you drive someplace, and you sit there, and you drink your coffee, and you're in your car, and it's nicer than a regular coffee shop. It's your coffee, And plus, you can go, there's Carbucks all over. I have a Carbucks, my favorite Carbucks is on the Potomac River, but I can't tell you where exactly, because it's...
are you segueing into another book plug, Joel? Did you or did you not write a book about the Potomac? That's pathetic. That is so pathetic.
Okay, it's called the Grand Idea.
No. We're not. I'm not going to let you say it.
Just because that book is finished and published, unlike your book on the autobiography of God, okay? There's no reason for you to get.
It is flattering that you should say that I could write the autobiography of God. Don't think I'm not flattered, but that's not the title.
Let me ask you a serious question.
Yeah.
Do you ever think a thought that's so big and cosmic, you feel like your brain is going to explode?
Happens all the time.
Yeah. Do you tell your wife, stand back?
Oh, they know. They feel it coming. The whole family.
The whole family.
I mean,
He's
the
got
big
one
thoughts.
coming on.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just start kind of vibrating. And there's a kind of divine light. But, okay, go ahead. Plug your book. What's it called? The Grand Idea, the Big Idea, the Great Idea?
No,
Is it about George Washington and the Potomac?
It is. You know what? We're not going to talk about that. Okay.
No, please,
I wrote a book on.
Exploit my website to shamelessly plug your book, please.
I'll just mention I did write a book about George Washington and the Potomac River and his schemes for turning the Potomac into a route to the West. And you know what? I want to do another book that maybe goes into the Ohio country, further west. Mm-hmm. It's got land, it's got mountains and rivers and trees and stuff. It's
do
not
a road
like,
trip.
If I did that, here's the thing about a book like that, is essentially you get paid for canoeing. I mean, look, I don't know about you, but you're probably sitting up there in your little home office, right?
Mm-hmm.
You haven't been outside in days.
Weeks.
I mean, you're tied to your laptop and your little camera and your little microphone.
Literally.
Where I'm sitting right here in this office, and it's nice. It actually is an office, which is nice because I just have a little pod over there. I can't tell if it's night or day, but see, if I did a book on the West, the Old West, the Ohio country, I could canoe.
You could canoe. I mean, you could take a road trip to get there.
I could take a road trip.
You do a Carbucks on the way.
The Carbucks.
And then you could canoe.
Okay. And
you could just be a regular John McPhee.
Well, no one could do that. No one. But
certainly not you.
He's he's written whole books about canoeing.
He's written whole books about it. He writes a book about every month.
Hiking and camping.
You know what? Mine are longer.
What?
My books, which come out about once a decade, they're longer than his that come out once a month. I just thought I'd point that out.
Yours are longer and they're a lot harder.
They're more cosmic.
Yeah, well, the thing about yours, here's my concern, is, okay, I mean, you're on this trajectory. First you did sort of like scientists, and then you did like the emergence of the moral animal, why are people good? Where does goodness come from? Then you did the sort of non-zero secrets of the whole universe, why do things sort of progress? And now you're doing God. I just don't know where you're going from here. I don't see the sequel to this current one. Are you there, Bob?
Yeah, I'm here.
What are you doing?
I was just drinking water.
Is that allowed?
It's allowed.
Do you want me just to talk for a little while you do that?
No, actually, okay. I do want you to talk, but I want you to talk about something other than what I write about next. I want to ask you one or two more things about global warming.
Let's talk about consciousness for a second. Okay, can we do that? Didn't you want to talk about consciousness?
Yeah, what I meant to say was I'd like to talk about either global warming or consciousness. Either global warming or the mind-body problem. I'm sorry, that's what I meant to say.
Well, actually, I mean, let's go back to the thing I originally asked you, which I think you thought was off topic or too cosmic or something. But I mean, I think there is this question of, are we a good thing? I mean, is the human civilization and all of our success is this good? I mean, what is happening here to this planet where one species has suddenly, in the course of, depending on your time frame, 100,000 years. 500 years, or depending on what you're talking about, become this technologically very adept species. At the same time that we don't really have a, world government. The most powerful person on the planet doesn't read books hardly, and is certainly views all this kind of global warming stuff as hippy dippy, crazy stuff.
You mean George Bush?
That's who I was referring to.
Although his science advisor told you that he had, in fact, his science advisor gave you a quote in which Bush seemed to take it seriously.
There was some question about what Bush's real position is on this.
But in any event, Bush hasn't done anything about it.
The point is that I mean, there is this dramatic thing that that one species has achieved consciousness, technology, and it's been very successful at essentially we are a climate change adaptive species, in that we live in all kinds of different climates, from Antarctica to the North Pole. And the question, though, is what's going to be the consequence for the planet? And has anyone thought that through other than Al Gore? I mean, Al Gore at least is thinking the big thoughts. And even if it may be that occasionally, and I'm not saying this, occasionally Gore might hit an alarmist note, i.e., a note that is a little too, might invoke catastrophe where others might merely foresee a disaster.
But anyway, you're not saying that, so.
But even if that's possible, isn't it true that that we should contemplate this question of where are we going? What's going to happen here? I mean, what's the trajectory here of this whole experiment? Is anyone who's driving this bus? Who's in charge here? What kind of world are we going to leave to our grandkids? I think those are important ideas, and it's very hard to think in those terms. Global warming is a tough problem because it takes place over the course of decades or a century.
Right.
And we're focused on the November elections.
And the solutions take a while to kick in. So you got to be concerned about your kids in their adult life or your grandkids to want to work up a real enthusiasm about making economic sacrifices for it. So yes, it's a long-term problem. So
you have to think globally and take seriously who we are and what we do. And I think you also have to think locally and think how much energy are we using? I mean I'm going to grow my own corn this summer.
Good.
Yeah, I like the idea.
You're going to put the corn cobs in your gas tank and. That's good.
I like that idea of, then harvesting it and all that. And my kids think it's insane. But
speaking of kids, could you talk to my kids about turning off lights?
Your house glows like it's a nuclear facility, doesn't it?
Oh, man.
Why don't they turn off? You know why they don't turn off lights? Because they don't actually understand the concept, number one, that you're paying actual money for the power for the lights.
No,
right?
that's not the reason, Joel. I've got the reason. If you say to them, that's costing us money, that has no effect at all, even if they believe it. But if you say to them, and this is a testament to this new ethos that the schools have installed in our children, if you say to them, leaving the lights on is wasting the planet's resources, you actually have a better chance of reaching them than if you say, it's wasting my money. And apparently they don't get the idea that my money is one of the planet's resources.
Right. They don't care about that.
I'm sorry, I got carried away. But
do you spank them? I mean, you consider it punishment.
I've never used capital punishment.
I think it's called corporal punishment, isn't it? Capital punishment would be too much.
You mean just beating them? You mean just beating them, not killing them?
No.
All the time.
Yeah,
all the time. I thought you meant killing them. Sorry. No, I've never killed.
That's good.
No, actually, I've never.
But here's the question: do kids, and for that matter, the rest of us really, do we have any connection to where our energy comes from? And most people don't really think in terms of there being a carbon emission footprint that comes from their, running their computer, running the, it's not. We know that when we drive a car, that because we see the exhaust pipe, whatever, that the car is emitting some kind of pollution. But people don't associate that with electricity, even though
although of course the costs are generally are more serious when you are moving a large object like a car, right? I mean, no, but you're right. We should cut back wherever we can. But on this,
actually, I don't even know about that. We should at least know what we're doing. I mean, we should be
feedback would be nice.
People like you, rather than devoting yourself to explaining these incredibly highfalutin, super cosmic, did natural selection come from natural selection kind of stuff that it makes my eyeballs want to pop out of my head.
Yeah.
What you should do is explain, how can we be in touch with where our food comes from. Like are you wearing clothes right now? I'm assuming.
No,
okay.
I'm not. I'm not. Are you?
Well, if you were,
yeah,
your shirt it doesn't come from Princeton, New Jersey. I know that it wasn't made in Princeton, New Jersey. It was made
by prisoners in China. And
made by prisoners
really good deal
in China.
On it, okay?
Yeah, and it had to get to you somehow. Anyway, have you read the Michael Pollan book?
No, but he's good. I like him.
He's so good. He's a very good writer. You should start writing again, Bob, because you could be like Michael Pollan. He's a very good writer, and he basically talks about food and how we don't know where our food comes from. And the entire industrial agricultural enterprise is built on our ignorance of how it operates. So if people could see a hog factory, where your bacon comes from, they would not eat bacon. They would say, I'm just not going to eat that stuff, if they could see it. If they understood, even when you go get a salad, you get a little bag of salad at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
It's grown in California. It has to be shipped all the way here. You probably shop at some fancy organic place there in Princeton, right?
All the time.
With Wild Oats? Which one is it called? What's it called?
Cover the range. There is a Wild Oats.
So all that organic stuff, it might be organic, but it also probably might have gotten shipped all the way across the country so that you can have, your fancy organic lettuces. So it's not really environmentally neutral.
No. Unlike your food.
Well, because I grow my own, and I slaughter my own animals.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, cats.
Yeah.
But we had enough of those, We had too many. The fur, I was having and the cats were so hard to clean because the fur gets stuck in your tongue.
I hate it when that happens.
It's horrible.
Now, Joel, a question about politics. What do you think about? You have not seen the Al Gore movie?
I have.
You have seen the movie? Because I have both seen him give the presentation in person and I've seen the movie. Mm-hmm. I'm here to tell you, it's better with popcorn.
Well, I'm sort of friends with Tipper. I jogged with Tipper.
You jogged with Tipper?
I did once. She hasn't talked to me in a while.
Yeah.
She may be mad at me. I don't know. She may be mad at me.
I met her and she did not mention you, I've got to say.
I don't know.
And I brought up jogging and asked her about past jogging partners and she didn't mention you. I said, think. And it just
so you've seen the movie and you've seen the presentation, and what's your overall thought about Gore?
I think the movie's good. Certainly as slideshow lectures presented that get theatrical release go, I've got to put it in the top, one. It's very good.
It's a very good slideshow. In fact, it's like PowerPoint,
on steroids
on the 24th century.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Gore himself is actually a hologram on stage. You know that he's not actually even there.
No,
he's home. He's at home.
Yeah,
it's all done with the computer.
No, he explained that.
He's not there.
Yeah.
How much longer do I have to sit here with this camera looking at me like this? Because I'm starting to get squirmy.
It depends on how much time you want to spend rambling aimlessly as opposed to actually talking about
This is the most focused conversation I've had in years.
Oh, man.
Years.
We need some Ritalin for you, buddy.
They ain't made the Ritalin that can settle me down.
No, I fear that's true. You're gonna have to buy in the gallon jug.
So, but you think he's going to run?
I think he probably will run, and I think he may be the best hope for the Democrats in terms of winning the actual election.
Why don't you think Hillary can win the election?
Well, you know...
I can just hear the sexism coming on. I can hear it coming on.
No, it actually, the answer might have to do with the... I'm not saying she can't win, but in terms of why the odds are against her, I might comment on sexism out there in the populace at large. I mean, it's...
Yeah, go ahead. Ridicule the people of the heartland.
Well, I mean, there are always doubts.
Eastern elites thinks the people, who
You mean the women who spend their time baking chocolate chip cookies and singing "Stand by Their Man"? You remember that remark by Hillary?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
that's what
it was
got the Hillary hatred ball rolling.
Yeah.
But also, there is the fact that in a time that's perceived as one of national peril, there are a lot of people who are reluctant to vote for a woman. When you've got a war on anything going on, that's an issue. And there's a lot of people who really don't like her. And as you're seeing, there's not all that many people who are just in love with her. That's becoming clearer and clearer just over the last few weeks, even in the Democratic Party. So I don't know. Now, Gore has issues too, for sure. And I actually think that as useful as this global warming film is in bringing his name back on stage to people who haven't been paying attention, it would be a mistake for him to let this become a central part of his identity.
To let global warming become?
Yeah, I mean, he's got the global warming vote locked up. Okay, he doesn't have to.
Well, that's an interesting point. I actually don't think global warming is a topic that's going to win him votes. I think if anything, it would be used by. I think he's serving up all kinds of things to be used against him because people will say he wants to cripple our economy. He thinks that America is destroying the world because we use so much energy. I think that if they can make John Kerry argue that he was a coward in the way he served in Vietnam, unlike George W. Bush. I'm sure they can find a million things to say about Al Gore in the documentary, An Inconvenient Truth. It's not a sort of a winning. This is what you're saying. It's not a winning general election campaign theme.
No, I don't think it should be a big part at all. I mean, I think they should do the spin, which I think is more or less accurate. That he was sounding the alarm about this back when there were a lot more skeptics, and now the conventional wisdom is much more in tune with him because he was doing this before '88. It turns out that he had this professor who was way early on the global warming research. So Gore actually has been thinking about this since college.
Right.
And he was holding congressional hearings long before Hansen sounded the alarm. Mm-hmm. So, they should use it to help establish him as somebody who seems to be far-seeing, but I don't think they should work hard not to let it dominate his identity because most people do consider terrorism threat number one. In fact, there's a line in the movie where he says, I hope this will show people or something that terrorism is not the only problem we face. Which is true. It's true, but I think even saying that almost gives his opponents an entree to say he doesn't appreciate how grave the terrorism threat is.
Right.
So I think he's got to be careful. But I think.
Well, and let's flip it around for a second.
Yeah.
The other concern I actually have is that if you look right now at who is the biggest sort of global warming skeptic out there, by reputation, it's George W. Bush. Who is the biggest, alarmist about it? Who is most concerned? Who's telling us, be worried about this? Mm-hmm. The number one person is Al Gore. It's like the 2000 election all over again.
Except
and fundamentally, global warming should not be an issue that divides so sharply along partisan lines. I mean, the fact is, there's a lot of Republicans care about the planet too. A lot of Democrats, they are also concerned about, what's the right, technological, economic solution to this very big problem. And I despair somewhat about how every topic in this country lately has turned into, just such an intense partisan, rancorous thing. I mean, if this is a serious issue, in a way, it may not be ideal for Al Gore to be both the spokesman for global warming and a candidate for the presidency of the United States. And I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility because I'd hate to, let's say he ran and lost again. Would that necessarily, be a blow against the whole movement to do something about global warming?
Oh, I don't think it would be taken as a verdict on that. And I think, as a kid, the things that...
You understand my point, is he the right face for that issue?
Is he the right face for the global warming issue?
Or is he too much of a politicized character, is what I'm saying.
Well, and you're also saying if he runs for president again, he may become too much of a politicized character.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, look, the conventional wisdom is pretty firmly landing in the concern about global warming camp. And in fact, you got to remember, he's not going to be running against Bush if he runs. He's going to be running against somebody else. Even Bush does not technically dismiss global warming. And Gore will probably be running against someone who acknowledges that it's happening and probably even that we should do something, So I don't know that would be a big part of the campaign. What attracts me to Gore as a candidate is, first of all, I think this is a time when America's national security actually demands a leader who is really willing to break the mold just a little and not be responsive to the everyday political forces that impinge on a president and permit him from doing the judicious things that need to be done in foreign policy and elsewhere. And I think the 2000 loss made Gore a good candidate for being that person. It just... I don't think he'll be, I don't want to be naive. If he's going to win the election, he'll have to do a lot of things that politicians, for better or worse, have to do. But I think he's somebody who will be more willing to venture off the standard political path than somebody who hadn't been through that 2000 experience. And in particular, to venture off of it in a direction that varies sharply from George W. Bush's direction. And since my own view is that George W. Bush has been exactly the wrong person for these times, I'd be happy to see someone boldly venture in a very different direction, sometimes notwithstanding short-term political pressures. I think Gore is the best candidate for that. I also think...
and the other thing is, that Gore has, read your books. That Gore, he's the kind of person who would read those...
I actually don't know. Clinton read Nonzero.
Clinton loved Nonzero.
True. I actually don't know. I don't know if Gore has. It's sad to think that maybe he hasn't. Isn't it, Joel?
It would be shocking. It would be his loss.
He's the type.
I would think that would be. He'd probably, want to keep that right by his bed every night, and just or read it at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's almost like scripture. But look, Gore appeals to people such as yourself because. He's got this wonky side to him. He's got this big, looks at the big picture.
No, he does.
And you're Mr.
That's not the
Picture.
appeal for me. But go ahead.
That's not the appeal.
I don't think so. No, the other thing I'd say on his behalf is I actually think this is a period when you need someone who is a good teacher as president, because the things we actually have to do for our national security in light of the terrorism threat are things that are not always the things that feel reflexively right to the reptilian core of our brains. And so you need somebody who can really explain the complexity of the situation and why, even if what feels good at the time is to have another war, because, that may not be the wise thing to do. And
can I just ask you this? Do we actually have a reptilian core of the brain? Because my understanding is that mammals go back a long way. Before the dinosaurs, and we're talking several 100 million years back. Did mammals come from reptiles?
Well, technically, all reptiles now existing are not something that mammals came from.
But
just as chimps aren't something we came from, even though we have a common ancestor. But I do think...
phylogenetically, where do reptiles and mammals split? Do they have a common ancestor that was not a reptile, not a mammal, but something that was, kind of, a rammal?
I don't know what the technical term for that node would be. Their most recent common point on the tree, but... it is safe to say that organism had the characteristics of a reptile in the sense of, not having the highly social kind of brain that mammals and then primates in particular came to develop. So, and what you mean by reptilian it's a misleading term as applied to everyday life because, in fact, the instinct of retribution is something that got reinforcement from natural selection even during human evolution. So it's in that sense a misleading term. But if you ask, is there a kind of a part of the brain whose evolution mainly reflects a time when our ancestors were very reptilian-like in their lifestyle, I think that part's true, even though it's not possible to pick a little part of the brain and say, okay, this is it and nothing else is. It's not quite that clean, but there's a theory called the triune brain theory by a guy named MacLean.
The what?
Triune. T-R-I, three-part.
Yeah, I know about that.
And that's where this idea, I think, comes from. And I think that's an idea that, in a rough way, stands up, but not in a nitpicky, fine-grained way.
Okay.
Well, you've almost just succeeded in exhausting my energy here, Joel. I don't know what else there is to say about this whole thing. Do you have anything?
About what?
That's the problem.
Where were we?
Yeah. Well, we had been talking about global warming at one point, I think.
What did we decide about consciousness? Or we didn't even talk about that, did we?
Yeah, I kind of didn't let you finish that question because after the first 5 minutes of it, I was starting to lose track myself.
But you are kind of a utopian, aren't you? I mean,
I think now that question I did answer. No.
You said you're a cynic. That's not. No, because I mean, when I read your stuff, I hear the chorus coming up, and it's glorious. We're heading toward a new dawn. I mean, it's cosmic evolution. I mean, from the raw material of protons and neutrons, there's emerged this new thing called intelligence. And it's at some point we're going to have a single universe wide cosmic thought. We'll all just be some big group hug, kumbaya on a cosmic scale. And that's what I'm picking up from you.
I'm thinking about titling the book that. Yeah. Kumbaya on a cosmic scale. Now, you've been reading my stuff very selectively, if that's your overall view of me. I mean, my view is very much that the future, who knows? We could screw it up and may well. If I had to bet, right now I would say chances look not bad that we'll screw it up. I don't just mean so much environment. In fact, I don't think that's the primary threat.
You think it's actual violence?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a topic.
That's
for
a cheery
another,
topic. Yeah.
That's probably for another day.
We're all going to die.
I think that's the way we should leave it today, Joel. Is pointing out that we're all going to die.
Yeah.
Which is true.
It is true. That is true. Yeah, we are all going to. Yeah.
I heard a lecture with a serious philosopher arguing for the concept of the afterlife in some sense of the word recently. Mm-hmm. That made me feel better.
That makes you feel better. Yeah.
Yeah. But we should probably sign up. Off.
So you can sign up.
Well, you should sign up in my crusade.
You've already signed up. I'm not even sure to what, but I know you have. Let's do it.
Okay, listen. First, I want to thank you. You've been a guest unlike any other.
Now, that's a real compliment.
No, it's not, but it's true.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for having me. It's been great to be here.
Well, you know what? One thing, Joel, I think they've seen the real thing today. If there's a they left still watching, they have seen the real thing.
What real thing?
The real Joel and Bob interacting. This is the way a conversation between us would be.
Yeah. It's always been this way, hasn't it?
It has. I mean. Yeah. I had hoped it might be different this time. But hey, who knows? We'll wait. We'll let the email come in.
And someday we're going to be dead.
And someday we're going to be dead.
Yeah.
We'll let the email come in, and we'll see whether people hated this. And then someday we're going to be dead in any event.
Was I supposed to turn the sound on for this?
No, don't worry about that. In fact, well, never mind.
Okay.
No more personal insults. Okay, so we're about to click stop, okay?
Okay.
All right, see you around.
All right, thanks.